Chiefs, Eagles, Super Bowl. Kansas City barbecue versus cheesesteaks. The Andy Reid Bowl. The Kelsey Brothers Bowl. What will Patrick Mahomes' influencer brother do to get in trouble in the next 2 weeks? These are all storylines that we're keeping an eye on. But
are we really keeping an eye on Mahomes' brother?
Oh, yeah, we absolutely are, man.
Ugh.
Come on now. Come on. So there's two dominant storylines that are coming out of the game. The first one is the Chiefs beating the Bengals, and whether or not this was more about Patrick Mahomes finding one last gutty performance to will the Chiefs into the Super Bowl, their third Super Bowl appearance in 4 tries, and their 5th straight conference championship game, I should say. They ended up winning this one. Or is it about the officials? And people want to pinpoint all the things that happened in the fourth quarter that would help the Kansas City Chiefs. I would say, Giglio, that I understand that there were some curious decisions made in this one. The biggest one being that the Kansas City Chiefs essentially got a free play. I mean, I guess they didn't hear the whistle, but they let it go to the completion of a play and said, oh, by the way, you get a do-over, because that's how it came about. But everything else, for the most part, I got the sense that whatever you thought of the calls, nothing really came out of them. There were no real payments. Even the intentional grounding call on Joe Burrow late when they got the ball back with 2:30, while it did put him back and they were in a 3rd and 16 situation, they converted the 3rd and 16 and then had to punt after that. So Patrick Mahomes gets the ball back, and then there was a call that nobody's going to disagree with. That's Joe Osai pushing Patrick Mahomes as he was clearly out of bounds. They're going to throw a flag on that every single time. And what I hate is that we don't have to engage with conspiracy talk, but man, people love to do it when the result doesn't go the way they wanted it to go.
I don't know if you necessarily have to default to a conspiracy. I think you can point out that the officiating was incompetent in the fourth quarter.
I mean, point to any Sunday. Point to any sporting event at this point. You can point to some incompetence.
But that doesn't explain how for the first 3 quarters of the football game, there were 4 penalties thrown on the Chiefs.
Yeah.
There were 4 penalties thrown on the Bengals.
Things get tight down the stretch. Again, right? That happens in just about every football
game. First 3 quarters.
Yeah.
Nobody should have any issue with how the first 3 quarters of the football game were officiated. 3 of those penalties on the Bengals, by the way, the first 4 of their first 4 were procedural. So, listen, the officials are there to make sure the timing is right. Players are offsides, onside are right. They're inbounds, out of bounds. Was it a catch? Wasn't a catch? Those are the things that they hey, excessive contact. Was there a violent, hit that was not a football play?
Yeah.
These are all things that the officials need to have high on their checklist, right?
Mm-hmm.
The fourth quarter of the football game, the fact remains there were 6 flags thrown. 5 of them were thrown on Cincinnati and only 1 against Kansas City. The one on Kansas City was a holding that the Bengals had picked up more yardage than the holding would have helped them. So
wasn't there like a taunting too at some point? If I'm trying to remember all the calls that were in this game, but anyway,
there was a taunting on the Chiefs for taunting.
Yeah,
again, first 3 quarters, no one's really going to complain. 4-4. The fourth quarter, to me, I know you're saying directly the Bengals were able to overcome the intentional grounding, but you don't know the play that they used on that 3rd and 16 wouldn't have been a play. I don't know if it's a play they used earlier in the game. I don't know if it was a play that they would have saved. There are plays you do save for your 2-minute drill.
Yeah.
So I don't think you can simply be dismissive and say that the penalties didn't matter because they were able to overcome some of them.
Well, here's the thing. I'm gonna go with what you just said. You don't know. Let's say they don't call the intentional grounding.
Sure.
Were they going to score on that drive?
I don't know the answer to that.
That's the thing. We don't know.
I know the drive was made more difficult. I know the clock was working against them.
And they overcame
I know they
that.
had to use a timeout when they probably didn't want to use a timeout, especially knowing that Patrick Mahomes last year let a comeback in the playoffs against the team in a very similar situation.
But they don't always
16
do that.
seconds or 18 seconds, whatever it was.
They don't always do that.
So
it's not always a comeback. Again, the answer to that is we don't know. And we assign these things as though we do know.
I would rather be the team that had no penalties called against me than the team with 5. How about that?
Okay. Well, look, you talk about incompetence, and it doesn't matter in the long run sometimes, right? Like, let's go back to the Eagles and the 49ers when.
Yeah, but that wasn't a 3-point game. That wasn't a tie game.
Well, that
wasn't a competitive game. So,
Joe, it sounds to me like you're simply mad that the wrong team won.
No,
that's what it sounds like to me.
I'm looking at the fourth quarter and
if
trying to determine.
If the roles were reversed, are we having this conversation?
From me or from someone else?
From you.
Probably not from me. I didn't have a Chiefs ticket.
Why? See, there it is. There it is. That's what it ultimately comes down to. If the roles were reversed, you are not having this, oh, man, well, look at XYZ of what could have happened, blah, 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 because you had a ticket.
Yeah, but
I don't give a crap about your ticket.
And that's fine. I understand that.
The NFL doesn't give a crap about your ticket.
No, they might.
They don't. They don't. No, they don't, because they're making money hand over fist anyway off of gambling. And certainly, I guess that's the part that ultimately bothers me. Gambling, and this is not directed at you specifically, but you are giving me an example. Gambling has warped the brain of how we talk about things in the long run. And there are so many people that are populating the main channels of how we talk about the NFL that we're worried about a backdoor cover as though it ultimately matters to 80% of the audience.
This wasn't
than anything
a
else.
Cover.
No, this is you being mad that your ticket didn't cash, man.
This was a team had a spot in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And there were, again, 6 flags thrown. 5 were thrown against them, and only 1 against the home team.
This is
and the calls. Okay, take out the 5th, take out the late hit, which I agree with you.
Yeah,
was a penalty and should have been penalized and was correctly called. The other 4 calls are judgment calls. So why would you make 4 judgment calls against one team and none against the other team? That's the part of it that doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, Steve Logan always said the refs know who's supposed to win, and I guess that's the whole point of home field advantage. If the Cincinnati Bengals wanted their own home field advantage, well, they could have had a better regular season.